Hello everyone, and so I'm doing this video. This is more independent, and so I want you to see this background photo here of downtown Los Angeles. And so I'm going to be real serious here about this particular commentary that I'm doing. It has a video attached to it, but I'm not going to play it because I'm really just using this as a backdrop because I want to talk about how Los Angeles has changed since I've been here. And what I noticed when I first came here in the 80s, I didn't see this much homelessness. And I'm just giving you a personal account of what I've experienced. I know that there was a time you could get apartments for 200, 300, 500, 600, and maybe the highest apartment at the time was maybe 800 or 900, and that is probably the highest it went. Most apartments were not like what you see now. They weren't where you're living next to nothing and you're bare bones and you're just trying to make it, and you're making it one paycheck at a time. You're having to work 2 and 3 jobs. You're having to feel pressure about where you're going to live because you're worried about getting evicted. And that is what a lot of people are facing. So here you see it's entitled Los Angeles Homeless Crises. Too many tents and too few beds. And so it's really gotten bad here in Los Angeles, and I don't think people really know the severity of how bad it has gotten. And so I just use that in the beginning as a backdrop. I kind of like switched off to like maybe a commercial because sometimes that happens, but I'm just really giving you a full account of what I've seen, living here in Los Angeles. When I remember coming here when I was around like maybe 9 or 10 years old, and there seemed like there was a lot of opportunity for African Americans to find jobs, and mainly in cities. What people try to do is go to cities because the cities usually have places, more opportunity and more places of employment for people who are really trying to make something of themselves. And so I remember in the 80s, a lot of apartments, if you were just starting out, you weren't looking for a house, you were looking for a place to stay until you got on your own 2 feet, and then maybe you could look into something a little more permanent, such as a house. And I believe even houses back then weren't as expensive as they are now. And so a lot of what I've noticed over the years is that homelessness has grown. It seems like each year it becomes worse and worse. And so now what has been happening is there's been a lot of tents, there's been a lot of homeless encampments all up and down Vermont Boulevard in South LA. Skid Row is began to spread out all over downtown. And so what I've seen is just like if you go, and I'm giving you accounts of things that I know that I've seen. Like if you go in the downtown area, there are some streets, there's some areas of downtown that seem more fancy, like by the Staples Center and the convention center, and they have huge events, and people spend a lot of money to see concerts and shows and things like that. And there's some restaurants and clubs in the downtown area, and the downtown has transformed tremendously. And what I've known over the years of living in Los Angeles, that downtown only had a small section, it seemed like a smaller section of a homeless encampment, which was better known as Skid Row. And so as time went by and they started moving in more fancier developments, or basically some of the hotels and the buildings that have been abandoned. They take them and refurbish them, turn them into hotels or clubs or restaurants, and or fancy lofts. And some of those establishments are extremely expensive, and it's for an expensive group of spenders. And so a lot of what has happened is there's a lot of gentrification that happens in the cities, and it's not just in Los Angeles or downtown, it's happening in New York, it's also happening in Atlanta, it's happening in some other places that have experienced a change where it just seems like there's a group of individuals and they sat around at a round table and they have a think tank, and they thought of how to make money off of poor people and families, and anybody will shell out the money. And some people can afford it and others just can't. And it seems like the people who are hit the hardest are the people of color, our families, are people who they're living like really where they don't really make like high income. They're not high income earners. They're really just living just to survive and feed their family, and so they're living paycheck
102
to
million
paycheck,
Americans
and they're
have
one
high
step away
cholesterol.
from
Which
living
drug
in a
will help
tent,
lower it naturally?
or living in a
T. Rowe
hotel,
Price
or living out
examines
of their
innovations
car, out of an
firsthand
RV.
because your
So
investments
what
deserve
I've
the
seen
full
over
story.
the years, I've
T. Rowe
seen
Price.
more tents, more homeless encampments that are under freeways. I've seen more RV families, people who live out of an RV, or they live out of their, or they're sleeping out of their cars. It's affected regular families, not just people who have mental illness or they have drug substance abuse, but it's also affecting regular working people who just don't make large incomes. And so I noticed that over the years when the rent started rising was when these developers would come in and they would buy property or buy some building and turn it into these fancy apartments that are really expensive, or luxury, as they call luxury apartments or luxury condos. And so a lot of them are not selling those properties so that families can buy them and trying to give them a chance to have home ownership. No, what they're doing is they're renting the condos out in an upwards of 2,000 or more, and 2,000 is probably the lowest that you can get, and you're not going to get probably anything lower than that. And usually it's a 1 or 2 bedroom at 2K, and then onward and upwards of 3K or more, 4 or 5 or 6 grand. Like if you go into the downtown of Los Angeles, some of those luxury lofts and condos are way more than 6 grand a month. And regular people with regular incomes cannot afford it. And so that is the reason why you have more homeless people. And it's what they fail to say is happening is that regular families are being evicted from their apartments, or these luxury or these fancy apartments that they throw these cheap fixtures in and call them luxury apartments. They are evicting these people in rapid pace because the people, when they're 2-3 months behind, or they don't show that they can continue to pay the rent down, if they lose their job, if something happens in their life where there's some type of tragedy or health problem where they have to pay a large health bill that takes from their rental money, then they wind up becoming victims of circumstance, and they end up evicted and they end up outdoors with no place to stay. And so this is what has been happening, and that's what they fail to mention. And so I know this is an article, and it had a video in the background, and it was showing the backdrop of people from the downtown of Los Angeles. That really is true. That's what had been happening. It says streets full of tents, the other side of LA. And so it's really sad, and it's true. That's what's really been happening. And they have all these politicians talking about how they're going to fix the problem, but the problem just seems to grow. This holiday, I'm going to share this with people. I may not even know who you are, but I want people to know that Los Angeles is getting worse and worse and worse when it comes to regular families, and a whole lot of black people are homeless, are becoming homeless, or they're struggling. They're having to have to work 2 and 3 jobs. And if you don't make $6,000 a month, if you don't make if you're not a high income earner, you are struggling. Even if you're middle class, you are somehow in the struggle because you have a car note, you have insurance, you have other things you got to worry about, maybe emergencies, your kids, things, other stuff could come up. By the time you get through spending your money for all the other incidentals, food, groceries, other little utilities, things like that, when do you have any money to save when they're snatching it away for these high rents? And so that's what winds up putting people in a complicated situation where they end up possibly nearing homelessness. And homelessness continues to grow because of this. I'm going to tell you, there are a group of people who feel entitled. They feel as though that people owe them something, and that having money is all they're concerned about. They don't care about people. They don't care about people's lives. They don't care about the fact that people have families and they need places to stay that are safe, clean. They need shelter. All they're concerned about is collecting rent. So I wanted to really make a heartfelt video about what I've seen, because despite what the news says, despite what some of the politicians say that they're claiming that they're going to be doing to fight against this homeless crisis, I think it's a national crisis, which I believe maybe Ben Carson or someone might have said it's not just a crisis, it's a national crisis. But I'm gonna be honest, I really am not that crazy about Ben Carson, because I don't feel like he's done enough either. I don't know if he'll look at the situation and evaluate it and try to change things, but it doesn't look like he's really in touch with what's really going on. I feel as though there are a lot of greedy land developers, and all they want to do is cash in. The problem with building all of these luxury high-rise condos and what have you, many of those places that charge as much as they do stay vacant. You'll see a lot of those high-rise condos and lofts, a lot of empty units, because they don't have. The problem is you have more people who make regular incomes, and you don't have a lot of high income earners. You don't have masses of high income earners. You only have that 1%, like Bernie Sanders said. And so that 1% out of the 99% that just make regular income, that 1% can afford that fancy living, but that 99% is getting evicted. That 99% of those people that don't make all that high rise, fancy luxury living money are the ones you see that are working 2 and 3 jobs just to keep the place that they do have, or they wind up in an RV, or they wind up in a hotel, they wind up sleeping out of their car, or they wind up having to relocate to somewhere they feel maybe the rent is going to be a lot lower, and it displaces those people and they have to move further out, which means they move further away from all of the places that they're familiar with. They might even have to relocate and move or quit their job. And there's the uncertainty of finding a new job. It's not for sure that you're going to find a new job, and you don't know how much that income is going to be, and if you're going to end up displaced wherever you move to, or you end up homeless wherever you move to, or you're in a situation where it's not ideal, it's not the best place to live, but you have no other alternative or no options. And so it really does a number what I've seen on black families and black people, and I feel it's deliberate. I feel as though that what I've seen, it's a war against the haves and have-nots, and that have-nots are the ones that are taking the brunt of this war. It's a poverty thing where they almost force people out of their living quarters. If you had Section 8, and for example, I know an experience where if you have Section 8, there are some people who will discriminate you because they assume that everybody is a certain way or lives a certain particular way who has Section 8 vouchers, and so you get discriminated, and so they alienate you or they ostracize you silently by making up stories or making up excuses so that you can't get into an apartment, and they want only certain people to move in certain neighborhoods. So if you're black, you get exiled from that neighborhood, and they can't tell you that they're racist, but they do little things that indicate that somebody's not doing things the right way because they simply just don't want blacks to live there, or they're putting you in a difficult spot. They don't see that this is probably all that you earn. You're on fixed income. And I even heard that there are some mobile home parks where people who, if they're elderly and they're on a fixed income, that even the people who run the mobile home parks have raised their space rent, because when you're living in a mobile home, you may own the mobile home, but that space that you're occupying, you have to constantly pay a space fee. And so they've even gotten clever as to going up on the space fee so that when you are a person that's elderly, let's say you make not that much money and you're not working because you're retired and you're on a fixed income because you get disability or SSI or whatever it is that they give you, or a pension, retirement, maybe it's not that much money and your health is different, and when you age, jobs don't want to hire you like they did when you were in your 20s, 30s, maybe 40s, because they don't want to take a risk of hiring somebody older because you have pre-existing health conditions, and something happens to you on the job, you could sue their company, so they don't want to hire you. Or you get to an age where maybe your health is not as what it used to be, and you physically are incapable of going back to work. So you just stay retired and live on the disability or the fixed income. But when you live in these mobile home parks, even those companies will try to raise the fees, which is unreal and unfair to older people, knowing that they live on a certain amount of money each month. Then they have to figure out how they're going to eat. We heard that recently Donald Trump administration was going to cut aid with the food program. That was either going to be cut or it was going to be eliminated. And this seems to hit the people that are poor, the people of color, the people that are elderly or disabled. It's hurting the 99%, the ones that don't make these high fancy incomes. Now, what I've noticed is it's like even when the downtown area, you can look on your computers or your phone or whatever and look up what the lofts are every month, what they cost. Look up what those fancy apartments cost. Sometimes they won't put the price there. You know why? Because it's so expensive that regular families can't afford it. So what they offer is all these amenities like a gym. They'll have a pool. You go up and down an elevator. They have maybe an escalator, and you go up and down these elevators to like the top of the roof, and they have this skyline, and so you're paying for all these amenities plus the place where you are staying at, and then on top of that you might have like where you can see all of downtown, and that's really fancy living. It sounds great, doesn't it? But when you hear how much it costs every month, which that money doesn't go into your pocket, it goes to the the landlords or the company and the rental company. It's not going for your benefit. The only benefit you get out of it, if there's any, is to be in the space of a place where it looks fancy, the fancy living. And so some people like living like that. Maybe they can afford it, but that's not regular people who have families that are working class. Everybody does not have that type of income and can't afford that type of fancy living. That usually was designated to the people who were entertainers and who were real high income earners even back in the 80s, but you didn't see as many of these fancy places that were cropping up all in the downtown area. And now they're spreading out into neighborhoods. So like what I was saying, when I went to visit some family members, there were condos that were being built on their block. And this is in the Los Angeles area, on a neighborhood block where homes, families. And so the new thing of what they've been trying to do, they as land developers and these companies that want to build these fancy condos, they've been persuading longtime homeowners to sell their house, to sell their property, so they can tear it down and build condos right in what would have been a neighborhood where there's nothing but rows of houses. So they're trying to make it into a situation where people are forced to make a decision. Either you live in this high rise or this condo in this high priced apartment, or you try to figure out how you're going to get into some type of program that's a low income, affordable housing. And if that doesn't work out, then you're homeless, or you're moving away, or you're trying to figure out other avenues and how to live and survive with your family or whatever on the income that you have. And what I've known is that when I came here with my family in the early 80s, it wasn't this much homelessness. We didn't see a lot of people up and down driving every so many blocks. You see a tent, or you see people that are out on the street that are sleeping on the bus bench. You didn't see as much of it. You've seen it only in certain areas where you knew, okay, this is where most homeless people usually are congregated. But now it is like everywhere. It's spread out everywhere. Hollywood, you'll see homelessness. You'll see homelessness all over Los Angeles. You'll see homelessness in other areas and other sister cities of Los Angeles. And people are just desperate for housing. And I feel like what they need to do is they need to make this rent that they've been charging, this 2K, 3K, they need to quit doing that. And they need to lower all of this rent because regular people cannot afford it. It's putting so much pressure on people, and it's putting people out on the street, and it's not a solution to any of the problems that we're dealing with today. It only makes things worse. On top of that, if you're late paying your rent, you're already late paying your rent, or you're trying to struggle paying your rent, then they charge a late fee because you didn't pay your rent, and they don't allow you grace period to pay your rent. And even if you get the grace period and you can't come up with the rent, they don't work with you. They don't understand your plight or your situation, your circumstance. They put you in more debt, or they put you in more pressure to come up with more money. On top of being late, now they charge you a fee, which from what I heard from a rental company, and I'm going to mention this company because I'm going to eventually take photos of how it really looks, because when you look on the internet at some of these apartments, they show you the nice the clean version of how some of these apartments look. But you don't see what these apartments look like when they don't pick up the trash, when there's roaches running around, but they want you to pay $2,000 or $3,000 a month, but they don't want to exterminate and they don't want to help you. And when you tell them that you have to wait until you get paid, they don't want to give you a grace period, or they don't want to wait. And right away, they want to tack on a $200 late fee because you didn't pay the rent on the first day of the month, when you might get paid on the 6th day of the month, or maybe you get paid on another day of the month. You get paid, but they can't wait. So automatically they tack a late fee on there. So that also gets people behind in their rent payment, and it pushes people in a hard position to have to make, do we stay or do we hurry up and head for the hills? And so that's what it does to a lot of people. A lot of people struggle because they struggle with making the decision. Is it worth it? And then a lot of times you'll have some of these same rental companies who will allow criminals to live in these buildings because they're making money in a whole nother way underground, because they can come up with the rent money, but it's dangerous how they come up with the rent money. And so they put people in a predicament where you're living amongst people who do illegal activity, and that's how they come up with the money. And how they come up with the money, all they're concerned about is just getting the money. They don't care how they come up with the money. Maybe one person is able to apply for the apartment and get in, but then they invite all their hoodlum friends to live there and sleep the night. And that's what I've also witnessed with some of these units in South LA, is that maybe one person is able to get the apartment, but the rest of the people they invite over are hooligans. And so they're paying like $300 or $400 to sleep there a night because they can't get an apartment because they have a criminal record as long as, New Jersey, all the way from LA to New Jersey. And so the thing is that they stay and hang out, and some of the younger generation will sometimes do this Airbnb, or they do this what is called couch surfing, where they sleep on it, pay $300, $400 to sleep in somebody's apartment for a night or two, and then they move on. And so some of that might be good if people are minding their own business and they're looking for a way out and they're trying to find work or trying to get on their own 2 feet. But what's bad about that is that if they're a bad group of individuals that come around, they trash the place, they keep up a lot of fighting, they don't know how to get along with the neighbors, they're targeting innocent neighbors and kids, and then you can't sleep because they're having wild parties where it trashes the building. And the rental companies, all they're concerned about is collecting rent. If you complain to these high rise or these luxury rental companies about what craziness and chaos is going on in their buildings, they get upset with you and tell you to call the police. And when you call the police, what the police does is tell you to talk to the building owner. And if you talk to the building owner, they try to change it around and try to make it look like it's your problem, not theirs. Because what their initial concern is just receiving rent money. They don't care about the safety of the people that live in some of these quote unquote luxury apartments. So if you come down here to the south of Los Angeles and see some of these apartments they're building up, some are somewhat affordable, and but you have to be living like next to nothing. So let's say you make a little more than next to nothing, and you want to make a little more because you want to have a little more to pay your car note, to pay all your other things that you got to do. You won't qualify for those apartments. So you got to live in the 2K, the $2,000 or $3,000 a month apartment, which doesn't guarantee your safety. So you might live in an apartment and they might have all these fixtures in there that look or appear to be fancy, but it's cheap. They just slap some glue down, put a commercialized fixtures in there, and then maybe they'll put like a microwave in there and a dishwasher, and then they want to charge you $2,000 or $3,000 a month to spend in a place where people are fighting, people are trying to cut each other outside of your window, they're killing each other, or they're threatening each other. And then if you complain to the building management because they don't live here, there's no manager, on-site manager that lives on the property, they don't care because their family's not being put in jeopardy or are made to feel in fear of where they live. But no, they want your 2K and your 3K a month. So watch, these land developers have properties like that in south of LA, and they don't care about the black people that live in them if it's not even safe. All they want you to do is pay rent, and then they'll threaten you and they harass you because you couldn't come up with the rent money, even though you're getting paid your job, and you might not get paid until like what, every 2 weeks. Some people have a job, maybe they get paid bi-weekly or they get paid monthly. They want to pressure you into paying that high rent, even though you still got bugs in your apartment, there's trash all outside, and they only like show the nicer, clean version of the building when they built it up and they cleaned it up or whatever when nobody was living there. But when they move in these hooligans or these ingrate people, these ones that keep up a lot of chaos, then they want to get mad at you and threaten that if you don't come up with the rent, they're going to charge 8% of your late fee, an 8% increase. And so that's the reason why I'm telling you, that's why you see a lot of people that are out in these tents. It's not just mental illness. It's not just drugs. Some of these people have been pushed out of their units because it's either unsafe to live there, and they've tried to live in their apartment or their little what was supposed to be a luxury apartment, live in their apartment. They're living without eating. They're living paying high rent increases and high late fees for rent. And that is the reason why people are struggling and they're out on the street. They get an eviction notice and they don't even give them a chance. And so this is what's happening. And I'm going to name one of the rental companies that is guilty of doing this. Golden Bee Properties. Please do not rent from Golden Bee Properties. Golden Bee. And if you see the ads, they're all over the internet for Golden Bee Properties, and he charges I think the cheapest is like $2,000, a little over $2,000 a month for rent. But if you move into any of these properties, they're in places where your safety is compromised because he doesn't care about who and what kind of people move in his building. All they're concerned about is collecting rent and their late fees. They don't have a grace period. They do that when you sign a contract with them. They want you to stay there for a year lease. But then once that lease is up, it goes month to month, and then what ends up happening is they start charging late fees and they start going up on your rent. And each year they try to go up on your rent and they increase it too much. And the late fees are $159 to $200 for a late fee on top of if you're late for paying your rent. So imagine that happening each month, and eventually it puts you in a situation where you feel forced that you got to do all these jobs and try to pay back all this money. And so that's why people try to hurry up and figure out ways to get out. They might even be forced to put their stuff in storage just to keep from having to be charged another late fee simply because they didn't get paid on the first. So I'm putting that out there because there's a lot of buildings and building companies just like Golden Bee Properties that has done the same thing, where they try to lure you in, they try to reel you in, they try to get you to look at the place, they even showcase it, and then they'll have like somebody that'll pick up the trash, and then they try to invite people over when the place is cleared out, where it's cleaned up, but they don't show you the version of the trash all over the ground and how nasty it looks. And then when people are outside, they're trying to duke it out and they're fighting and they're trying to kill each other out there. You don't get to see that side. All their concern is for you to move in so that they can collect the rent. And that's what a lot of these the developers, they don't live in these units. They don't care. They're making money off of you. That's what they care about. These managers, sometimes they don't have an on-site manager. He just showcases the building and the apartments, and he tries to lure you in, and he'll say whatever he can to get you to move in. The owners of the property, They don't even, a lot of times, they don't even come around unless they do an inspection or they want to promote their property so that they can put it on the internet or they can show off how great their properties are. But you don't know what's really going on inside of those buildings. And then they'll have all these wonderful reviews on the internet, but that's coming from people who work for them or people that are related to them or people who are friends with them. It's not from regular tenants that live in these units and know what troubles go on in these units. And so if you say anything about these units, then they try to harass you, but they harass you anyway, even if you don't say anything about it. So I just wanted to put that out there to let you know, beware of Golden Bee Properties. It's called exactly what it is, Golden Bee Properties. Don't move in any of those unless you think you can afford it, but I'm just word to the wise. Even if you could afford it, your safety is going to be compromised because if you move into those rental units, you don't know, they don't screen their tenants. They don't screen all of the people, and then their tenants have a bunch of friends that hang out and move into those places, and they're like staying like a night or two, and they keep up a lot of commotion, and then they block you. So you can't get in and out. There's some properties where there's one way in and one way out, entrance and exit. And so you'll have a bunch of hooligans that are double parked and then they'll block you. If you have to go to the hospital or you have an appointment, you have to go to work, you're late. And so, word to the wise, don't move into any of those units. It looks nice on the internet, but once you move in, you'll see a whole nother side of what's really going on. And so I'm just warning you. And then there's specific properties that you'll see that they'll showcase, and they try to get people to come and look at them. But there's 3 units that I know specifically where people moved out and they have stayed empty because they went up on the rent. January, they're putting a law into effect about unincorporated areas that have high rent increases. I don't know how long that stays into effect, but I know one thing. Anybody living in those areas, your best bet is to save your money and move out as fast as you can. Thanks for listening.